Karoline Leavitt went from owning the debate stage to crying outside a courthouse, all because of one sentence, one line about Jasmine Crockett. She said it like it was nothing, just finishing a thought, not like she was tossing a match into a room soaked in gasoline. It was a Wednesday just after 3 p.m. Eastern. Karoline sat at the far right of the panel on American Flashpoint, a fast-talking political show taped out of Jacksonville. The conversation was already tense. Funding priorities, urban crime, partisan gridlock. Then the host mentioned Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Karoline leaned forward, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and dropped the line that would explode across the country by sundown. She's not serious. She plays the part. Emotional, dramatic, loud. That's her whole brand. She's not built for real policy. It was delivered casually, but it landed hard. The room paused. Not dramatic. Just one beat too long. You could hear someone breathing through their nose. Then the conversation moved on, but the comment didn't. By the time the taping ended, producers were already seeing their phones blow up. An intern clipped the exchange and posted it on the show's Twitter. They figured it might stir up some chatter. They were right. Within 30 minutes, 2,000 retweets, then 8,000, then 50,000. On TikTok, someone slowed the clip down, looped the words. Emotional, dramatic, loud, captioned it, dissected it. Suddenly the internet was doing what it does best, pausing, rewinding, analyzing every micro-expression. But that wasn't the worst of it. The clip didn't show her expression in full. The smirk, the casual dismissal, the shift in tone that said more than the words themselves, and people noticed. Even those who didn't follow politics had an opinion. In a nail salon in El Paso, a woman shook her head watching the clip. Why they always go for the same stereotype. In a break room in Youngstown, someone said it out loud. She knew exactly what she was doing. Back in Jacksonville, Karoline sat in the makeup room, scrolling through notifications. At first, it was business as usual. Great point. Tell it like it is. Then came the shift. A wave of angry replies, hashtags with her name, people calling her racist, demands for an apology. Karoline rolled her eyes. They're overreacting, she muttered to no one. Gina, her stylist, paused mid-brush. You sure about that? She asked quietly. Because people look pissed, Karoline. And it's spreading. Karoline waved her off. They always get dramatic. Give it a day. But it didn't cool down. It caught fire. By that night, it was everywhere. Trevor Santiago from Right Now Weekly went live. The coded stuff? It's worse than saying it outright. It's dressed up to sound civil, but it hits the same nerve. Even her usual defenders stayed silent, or worse, shared the clip with captions like, "Yikes. Bad take." That night, her inbox was flooded. Brands she worked with paused collaborations. One PR agency sent her manager an email with the subject line, "Is this salvageable?" She still refused to apologize, didn't think she had to. But she underestimated two things: how fast the internet moves, and how far Jasmine Crockett was willing to go to defend her name. By Thursday morning, it had escaped the political echo chamber, hairdressers in Modesto, a substitute teacher in Scranton, a guy at a bait shop in Biloxi. They'd all seen the clip or seen the reaction. It wasn't just politics anymore. It was personal. It was cultural. It was racial. And once, it hits all three. Good luck putting the lid back on. Karoline woke up to 3 missed calls and 17 texts. Her manager, Lyle, was already outside her condo when she opened the door, barefoot, squinting into the light. "You've got to get ahead of this," he said before she even said hello. Inside, the coffee machine hissed. Lyle followed her to the kitchen. "They're dragging you on every platform. Even People picked it up, Karoline. People. Not The Hill. Not Politico. People. I didn't say anything wrong," she snapped. Lyle sighed and held out his phone. She looked. Headlines screamed back, "Karoline Leavitt under fire for alleged dog whistle." Emotional, dramatic, loud. Leavitt comment. Sparks national outrage. Crockett responds, "I know exactly what she meant." And worse, the late-night shows had found it. Colbert played the clip, deadpanned. "I believe that's called the Triple S stereotype speed run." The crowd howled. Karoline's stomach turned. "They're twisting it," she said under her breath. "She is dramatic." "Even if she is," Lyle said carefully, "you've got to understand how it sounded, coming from you, with that tone." with that face, that smirk. She dropped into a chair and rubbed her forehead. This was supposed to be her turf. Strong takes, edge-walking sound bites. But this wasn't blowing over. It was getting bigger. Think pieces, podcasts, 3-minute videos breaking down the clip like it was the Zapruder film. And Jasmine, she didn't stay quiet. She posted a video. No lighting, no filter, no script. Just her, sitting on her porch in Dallas, tired but composed. This isn't about me being upset. It's about being labeled. Again. Reduced. Again. And for everyone saying, "Oh, she didn't mean it that way." Let me ask you, how many times are we supposed to just eat that and smile? The clip was raw, honest. It hit, and it kept hitting. Celebrities reposted it, athletes, even people Karoline once interviewed. Back in Jacksonville, American Flashpoint went into damage control. They pulled the episode from YouTube. Their press team issued a soft statement. "We believe in civil discourse and clarity across perspectives, but the damage was done." And Karoline. She still hadn't apologized. Not yet. But by the end of the week, she'd be crying outside a courthouse, her future unraveling in real time. All because of one sentence and everything it revealed. Meanwhile, Karoline's phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Her aunt in Idaho texted, "What did you say? My church group is asking." A high school friend messaged, "Girl, I saw Twitter. Call me." But Karoline said nothing, not publicly. Her team advised, "Silence, wait it out, let it cool." Then the email hit. It was a forwarded message from Jasmine Crockett's attorney, sent to Karoline's team, and CC'd to at least 6 media outlets. The subject line was clear, weaponized. Notice of intent to file, defamation. Lawsuit Crockett v. Leavitt. Karoline stared at the screen. Her eyes scanned the bullet points. $80 million in damages. Defamation, character assassination, incitement. 80? She whispered. Lyle nodded grimly. "That's not a lawsuit," he said. "That's a message. She's not playing." Karoline laughed, short and sharp, but it wasn't funny. "This is insane. Over one comment?" "No," Lyle said. "Over what that comment represents." Still, part of her clung to the hope that it would pass. If she stayed quiet long enough, maybe, the storm would move on. She hadn't yet grasped the worst part. The silence from the people who used to have her back. By day 3, the quiet was unbearable. Karoline hadn't said a word publicly, and it was eating her alive. She paced her living room in socks, phone in hand, staring at her reflection in the black screen of the TV. The condo felt like a tomb. Even her neighbors, who normally offered a wave or small talk, now avoided eye contact in the hallway. She could feel it, how fast the air had changed. At 11 odd a.m., she opened her notes app. "To everyone who's been hurt by what I said." Too soft. Delete. "I said something on air that's been misunderstood." Too defensive. Delete. By 12:30, she gave up trying to write it herself. She called Shay Whitlow, her media crisis consultant. Shay had handled flameouts from governors, influencers, tech bros, you name it. "Keep it short," Shay said. "And don't say you're sorry, unless you actually mean it. The public can smell fake from 3 states away." Karoline sighed. "It's not that I'm not sorry. This wasn't supposed to blow up like this. I didn't even say anything directly about race. Intent doesn't shield you," Shay said gently. "Impact does the talking now." That part stung, because she knew Shay was right. By 4 p.m., they had a draft. Careful, stiff, legally bulletproof, just human enough to post, not human. Enough to apologize. She uploaded it to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. The past few days have been incredibly difficult. I understand that my recent comment during a live panel discussion caused pain for many people. That was never my intention. I value respectful political debate and regret that my words have taken focus away from the issues. I hope we can return to productive dialogue soon. The replies came fast. Too little. Too late. So you're not sorry. Just sorry people. Got mad. This reads like your lawyer wrote it. And maybe he did. Karoline turned off her phone and poured a glass of wine. She barely touched it. Her mind was stuck on Jasmine Crockett's Instagram video. The calm. The control. Somehow, Karoline had become the loud one now. The defensive one. That night, Crockett went live. She didn't name Karoline directly, but spoke like she'd been waiting years to say this. I've been called every version of too much, too angry, too loud, too intense. And now, when I speak with emotion, I'm told it's my brand. Like, my humanity is a marketing gimmick. We don't have to keep eating that. Not anymore. The crowd cheered. Comments flooded in. Someone yelled, "Take her down," from the back. Back in her condo, Karoline sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, watching through tears. She didn't want to admit how real it was. The next morning, she called Shay. "Okay, I'm going to say something you won't like." "Great. You should have gone on camera." Karoline groaned. "No way. That would have made it worse." "You can't out-silence the storm. People already decided how you feel. Now you look calculated." "I am calculated," Karoline snapped. "That's how I survive politics. You think Crockett doesn't have PR advisors whispering in her ear?" Shay was quiet. Then, softly, "She doesn't need them. You gave her all the fuel." The silence after that hit harder than any headline. Days dragged on. Brands that once chased Karoline for endorsements quietly backed out. Her podcast partner paused the show. The morning show she co-hosted in St. Augustine, no callback for Friday segment. She watched her career dry up in real time, and still, no word from her network, no statement, no call. Just a growing void where support used to be. Karoline wasn't ready to panic. Not yet. Not until the silence turned public, and it happened fast. Monday, 9:08 a.m., Central Time. A podium stood outside the federal courthouse in San Antonio. Jasmine Crockett appeared. Navy blazer, no jewelry, no entourage. Just two attorneys and a stack of folders. The Texas heat didn't faze her. Her voice cut through the noise. "I'm not here because of politics. I'm here because lines were crossed. News, cameras rolled. The live stream lit up Twitter before the first question. By 9 Guam a.m., it was national news. By noon, Karoline sat in her car in Sarasota, engine off, eyes glued to her phone, watching the press conference through the windshield reflection, like it wasn't her life unraveling. Crockett's attorney, Maxwell Dunn, spoke next. "We are officially filing an $80 million defamation lawsuit against Karoline Leavitt. The claim is rooted in the damage caused, not just to my client, but to the broader community of women who face this coded dismissal daily. We're pursuing justice, not headlines." The folder Dunn held was thick. Reporters said it wasn't about one comment. It cited a pattern. Clips, tweets, podcast episodes, all painting a portrait. Karoline had no idea this was building. Her mind spiraled. She tried calling Shay. No answer. Her phone buzzed again. CNN had picked it up. MSNBC ran a chyron. Crockett, V. Leavitt, $80 million lawsuit filed over defamatory remarks. Karoline lowered her phone and sat back, breathing through clenched teeth. She thought about what to say, but nothing came. Not even defensiveness. Just static. By early afternoon, her name trended again. But this time, it wasn't just public opinion. It was legal. Serious enough to stop sponsors from calling back. Serious enough to make insurance companies schedule emergency meetings. Back in Texas, Crockett closed the press conference with words Karoline couldn't forget. We all make mistakes. But when those mistakes get televised, monetized, and weaponized, you lose the right to act like it's no big deal. Boom. Quote of the day. News outlets replayed it on loop. Finally, Karoline heard from her lawyer, Miles Carson. By 2 p.m., no sugarcoating. This is worse than we thought. They've got receipts, full transcripts, a spreadsheet of your social posts going back years. They're building a case that this isn't about a slip-up. It's about intent. She rubbed her eyes, still in the driver's seat. That's not fair. It doesn't have to be, Miles said. It just has to be convincing. And what they want. Money, maybe. But mostly they want to make an example. $80 million. That was the statement. Karoline leaned back, the roof of the car suddenly too close, the whole day like a camera zooming in tighter and tighter. While everyone else watched from a safe distance. That night, cable news didn't just cover the lawsuit. They dissected her tone, her history, her background. One outlet dug up old footage of her college speech at Suffolk University about restoring traditional values. Another found a podcast from 3 years ago, Why We Can't Keep Tiptoeing Around Truth. Her past was now weaponized, and the fight had just begun. Karoline had forgotten half the things she'd said over the years. Now they were all being read back to her, twisted, clipped, out of context. Or maybe not so out of context, at all. Tuesday morning, her mother called. Honey, I'm worried. This isn't like the other stuff. This feels bigger. Karoline almost said, It's fine. But her throat clenched. She couldn't lie. Not to her mom. Not anymore. I know, she whispered. What she didn't know was how deep the silence from her network would cut. How it wasn't just avoidance. They were preparing to cut her loose. Karoline checked her inbox 10 times that morning. Nothing. No reply. No call. Not even a generic PR note from the corporate team. The same people who used to flood her with pre-show notes, segment ideas, and gift baskets after viral appearances. She called her producer, Angela Dominguez, straight to voicemail. That's when it hit her. Not just rejection, but the insult of being ignored. By 3 p.m., she stopped waiting. She showed up in person. She drove to the studio building off Highway 301 in East Tampa. Her badge still worked. Security buzzed her in without question. Inside, the air felt different, colder. Familiar faces suddenly didn't meet her eyes. One assistant editor spotted her, fumbled his coffee, then disappeared down the hall. She knocked on Angela's door. No answer. But it wasn't locked. Angela was inside, typing. Karoline stepped in. Hey. Angela looked up slowly. Karoline? That pause said everything. What's going on? Karoline kept her voice low. Angela closed her laptop. You're not clear to be here. I'm not suspended. Not officially. Angela nodded once. Then what is this? Everyone's acting like I don't exist. Angela hesitated. There's an internal review. Legal's involved. They're worried about liability. So I'm radioactive now? Angela didn't answer. Karoline swallowed hard. Are they letting me go? Angela took a breath. It's being discussed. Cold. Clean. Karoline tried to speak, but her throat tightened. I gave this place everything. I bled for this brand. Angela softened just a little. I know. But this isn't something they can spin. Karoline laughed bitterly. So they're throwing me away to protect the logo. Angela stood. I'm sorry. You need to leave. If I don't call security, someone else will. Karoline didn't argue. She walked out without a word, past the editing rooms, past the conference glass where they used to bring her coffee during meetings. She stepped into the Florida heat, got into her car, didn't start it, just sat with her hands on the wheel, fighting the urge to scream. That night, an Insider Media blog dropped the headline, Network Weighs Termination of Leavitt Amid Defamation Lawsuit. It cited multiple internal sources. Someone leaked it, maybe someone she used to share makeup chairs with. She turned off the lights in her apartment and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't decide which was worse, the lawsuit, the public dragging, or the feeling that the people who built her career were already scrubbing her name from their contact lists. At 11:12 p.m., she finally texted Shay. They're letting me go, not officially. 2 minutes later, Shay replied, I know. Heard from someone at booking. Karoline's eyes burned. Is this salvageable? 3 dots danced. Then, not if you keep trying to defend the comment. The longer you stand by it, the smaller your circle gets. Karoline stared at the screen. She hated that advice, to my gut. But deep down, she knew Shay was right. She had built her brand on never backing down, never apologizing unless it came with a punch. But now, there was no audience left to cheer. The next morning, her termination became official. A vague email, a quiet HR meeting, no press conference, no farewell. Just a bullet point in the news cycle. Karoline Leavitt no longer with the network. Before she could regroup or breathe, something else slipped through the cracks. Private conversations leaked to the media, painted her in a light she wasn't ready to face. The leak came from a group chat, not even a big one, just some former and current media insiders. Karoline's name had been there before, mostly praise and banter. But this time, someone screen-recorded a private voice. Memo she'd sent just days after the Crockett comment blew up. It wasn't meant for the public. Raw, defensive, exhausted. She didn't even remember sending it. Just knew she was venting, thinking out loud at 2 a.m. Pacing her bedroom barefoot, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Now, the whole country had it. I'm not racist, she said in the recording, voice shaky and low. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend every time someone disagrees with me. It's because of their lived experience. This whole thing is theater. Jasmine knows what she's doing. She's milking this for attention. That line, milking this for attention, was clipped and re-uploaded thousands of times, often stripped of context. Hashtags flared again. Some users added dramatic music, angry captions. A few tried to defend her, but it was just a whisper in a hurricane. Karoline watched it all from the couch, barely moving. Sweatshirt on, hair tied up, barely touching food. It wasn't just the lawsuit or the job or the internet. It was the betrayal. She narrowed the leak down to 2 people. One who'd shared dressing room stories with her. Another who helped rehearse before tough shows. The thought made her skin crawl. How fast privacy turned into performance. She called again. You've got to get ahead of this. Not a statement. On camera. People need to see you, Karoline. No answer. You don't have the network anymore. You don't have sponsors. What you have left is your face, your eyes. Let them see what this has done to you. Why should I have to cry on cue to prove I'm human? Because you spent years building an image that doesn't blink. Silence. Are you saying this is my fault? I'm saying you turned yourself into a brand, and now people are treating you like one. That hit like a punch. Later that evening, Karoline tried filming something herself. Just her iPhone, no lighting, sitting cross-legged in her living room. 3 takes, deleted each one. She didn't like how her voice sounded. She hated how tired she looked. On the 4th try, she couldn't find the words. She let the camera run longer than she meant to. I used to think if I spoke loud enough, clear enough, nobody could twist it. I thought that was strength, but maybe I wasn't really listening to the people I was talking about. She paused, staring into the lens. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness. I just know I don't want to be this version of myself anymore. She didn't post it. Not yet. Saved it to drafts. Maybe just saying it privately was enough. But the next morning, her lawyers called. We need you sharp for the pre-trial meeting next week, Miles said. They're coming in with full documentation, timelines. You need to be ready. Karoline wiped her face with her sleeve. Ready? For what? To sit in a room where everything you've ever said in front of a microphone gets read back to you by someone who wants to break you. That's when she broke down. Finally. Not in front of a camera, not online. Just alone in her bathroom, crouched between the tub and the sink, sobbing like a dam had snapped, gasping, ashamed and underneath it all. Something heavier than guilt. Loss. She had lost control of the story, lost her reputation, maybe even herself. Her mom texted later. Still proud of you, still love you. Let me know if you want to come home for a few days. Karoline didn't reply. While she crumbled in private, the public story was only heating up, because as the trial date neared, everything she'd tried to contain was about to be dragged into the light. The week before trial felt like watching a building tilt. Slowly. Right before it collapses. Everyone could see it coming. The tension wasn't in the fall. It was in the wait. Karoline arrived in Austin 4 days before court. Her legal team booked her a suite in a downtown hotel. Top floor, discreet check-in, security guard outside her door. The windows faced east, and from her bed she could see the courthouse skyline. Every morning it got harder to look at. News vans lined the curbs. Commentators filmed from nearby cafes. A podcast set up a temporary studio in a second-floor yoga loft, just to cover the trial from the ground. People weren't just watching, they were invested. Karoline hated every second of it. She wore a hoodie and sunglasses for a quick walk to the pharmacy. It didn't work. A woman passing by did a double take, then pulled out her phone. She's here, the woman whispered on speaker. I just saw her leave. She looks tired. Karoline quickened her pace. Back in the hotel lobby, someone from housekeeping gave her a polite nod and hesitant smile. Then nothing more. The silence from strangers was louder now than the criticism. Miles held prep sessions twice a day, morning briefings, evening drills. They practiced answering questions, staying composed, remaining focused, especially when old clips got dragged up out of context. But nothing prepared her for the moment. Miles slid a thick brown folder across the table. You need to read this. It was Crockett's side of the filing. Official, stamped, nearly 90 pages. Screenshots from Karoline's past shows, all laid bare. There were timelines of her social media activity, references to specific dates where she'd made comments. These details, taken alone, seemed minor, just isolated moments, but placed side by side, they formed a pattern, a story, a weapon. Karoline flipped through page after page. At one point, she paused on a blurry still frame from an old live stream, her face frozen mid-sentence. A caption beneath it read, "Dismissive tone when referring to Crockett's policy proposal on housing reform." She almost laughed. Dismissive tone? Like that was now evidence. "Do I even have a shot at winning?" she asked, staring down at the table. Miles didn't answer immediately. "We can argue intent. We can challenge the damages," he said carefully. "But if the jury connects the dots emotionally, that's harder to beat. Because it's not really about what I said. It's about what people believe you meant." She looked up at him. "And what if they're right?" Miles blinked, caught off guard by the question. That night, Karoline tried to sleep but couldn't. At 3 a.m. she sat by the window, looking out over the city. Down below, a local news crew was still camped outside the courthouse steps, light kits glowing faintly. She thought about going down there, saying something, getting ahead of it. But she knew it wouldn't change much. The internet didn't want answers. They wanted arcs. They wanted villains to fall, heroes to rise. Right now, Karoline wasn't in the hero category. The next day, someone leaked the witness list. Her stomach dropped when she saw who was on it. 2 former co-hosts, one producer she hadn't worked with in over a year, a communications consultant she'd fired after a single phone call, people with receipts, people with grudges. She texted Shay, "They're gonna crucify me." Shay replied, "Only if you let them walk you to the cross." But Karoline wasn't sure she had a choice anymore. At the courthouse the day before the trial, reporters caught her stepping out of a black SUV. She didn't speak, kept her eyes forward, shoulders tense. One camera caught her blinking back tears. That image made the front page of 4 news sites by afternoon. But no matter how brutal the headlines were, nothing could prepare her for the courtroom. The testimonies, the evidence, and the way Jasmine Crockett would carry herself. Once the trial finally began, the courtroom was colder than she expected. The air conditioning hummed overhead, a low, dull current that never let up. Karoline sat at the defendant's table, trying not to fidget with the cuffs of her blazer. Her chair creaked if she leaned too far back, so she stayed still. Upright, both feet flat on the floor. Directly across from her sat Jasmine Crockett. Calm, poised. She didn't look smug or vengeful. She looked prepared. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Teresa Bledsoe from Galveston, called things to order right at 9 a.m. No cameras, just sketch artists and reporters in the gallery, pens moving fast. Opening arguments started with Maxwell Dunn, Jasmine's lawyer. "This isn't about a slip of the tongue," he said. "This is about a pattern, a repeated dismissal of a woman of color, framed with coded language, used on a national platform for political gain." Karoline tried to focus on her notes, but her palms were sweating. Dunn kept going. "This comment wasn't an accident. It's consistent with a media strategy that plays to certain audiences by minimizing others. That strategy caused harm, reputational, emotional, and financial, and we intend to prove that." Then Miles stood, steady and calm. "Yes, my client made a comment during a heated political debate," he said. "But was it defamatory? Was it false? Was it designed to incite hate or cause lasting harm? No. What we're witnessing is the criminalization of opinion." He paused. "And we have to ask, what does that mean for all of us?" Some heads in the gallery nodded, others didn't. Then the witness list began. First up was an ex-producer from American Flashpoint, a soft-spoken man named Brenton Hoyle. He looked uncomfortable on the stand. She had a style, Brenton said. Karoline was sharp. She knew what would get clicks. But I remember meetings where she said things like, "Let's push her buttons," referring to Congresswoman Crockett. Miles raised an eyebrow. "You're sure she meant Jasmine Crockett?" Brenton hesitated. "I mean, that was the topic that day." Then came the emails, screenshots projected on the courtroom screen. Karoline recognized them instantly. Messages she'd typed quickly during show prep, never thinking they'd resurface. One read, "She's going to snap. That's her thing. She can't keep her cool." Karoline's stomach turned. Her lawyer tried to argue it was just internal speculation, not malice. But the jury was glued to the screen, not Miles. Then Jasmine took the stand. The room went silent. She spoke slowly, clearly. No tears, no theatrics, just steady clarity. "I've had to defend myself my whole career, in debates, in public. I expect disagreement, but this was different. This wasn't about policy. It was about the way I speak, the way I move. It was about painting me as irrational, aggressive, loud, because that's the easiest story to tell." Her voice wavered just a little. "That narrative follows women like me, long after the cameras are off." Karoline looked down. She didn't want to, but she couldn't meet Jasmine's eyes. When Miles stood for cross-examination, he was respectful but firm. "Congresswoman Crocker, would you agree public figures often face harsh criticism, even misrepresentation?" "Yes," Jasmine replied. "But there's a difference between critique and caricature. Do you believe Karoline Leavitt genuinely intended to cause you harm?" Jasmine paused. "I believe she didn't care if she did." The room fell silent, that line hanging heavy, not angry, not accusatory, just raw and real. As Jasmine stepped down, Karoline caught a juror's long, low exhale. Then came the recordings, clips from past episodes stitched together. Karoline's voice layered over images, not shouting, not name-calling, but pattern after pattern of cold dismissal, sarcasm, clipped phrasing. Miles objected, calling it editorial theater. The judge allowed it, warning the jury to consider context. But the damage was done. By the end of day 2, Karoline felt hollow. She waited for someone, anyone, to pull her aside, say, "You're doing okay." No one did. Not even Shay, who flew in for the second day, said more than, "Stay composed. The jury's watching every blink." That night, Karoline didn't return to the hotel. She sat alone in her rental car, tucked in a shadowed corner of the garage, eating cold takeout from the passenger seat. She thought about a time when being on TV made her feel invincible. Now she just felt painfully visible. But the verdict was still ahead. And as closing arguments neared, Karoline knew this wasn't just about her case. They were deciding the future of her voice. 3 days. That's how long the jury took to deliberate. Karoline spent every minute pacing between the hotel, the courthouse, and a small coffee shop around the corner where no one bothered her. The barista never asked for photos, didn't even say her name, just handed her a paper cup with a single K scribbled on the side and a quiet nod. That became her refuge. On the morning of the verdict, she woke before sunrise. No makeup, no notes, just a quiet moment staring at her reflection, wondering if she'd ever like that face again. Not the image the public knew, sharp and untouchable, polished and somehow unfeeling. By 8 a.m., the courtroom was packed. Extra security, reporters crammed into the back rows. Karoline sat perfectly still beside Miles, hands clenched tight in her lap. The judge entered. The jury followed, silent and steady. The forewoman, an older woman in a grey blazer and silver-framed glasses, stood and cleared her throat. We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff. Karoline's stomach dropped, and award damages in the amount of $12 million. 12? Not 80, but 12 million was real, tangible, and devastating. The courtroom murmured quietly. Jasmine Crockett remained still, didn't gloat, just lowered her eyes for a second and exhaled softly, like someone who'd been holding her breath for a long time. Karoline didn't cry. Not then, not while the cameras were still rolling. She sat numb, letting the weight settle on her shoulders like bricks being laid, one by one. Outside, the press swarmed. Miles shielded her from the flashing cameras, repeating over and over, no comments, until they reached the waiting SUV. Back at the hotel, Karoline locked herself in her room and finally let it go. Her hands shook. Her breath came in waves. She wasn't even sure what she was grieving. The money, the career, the pride, or the person she thought she was before any of this began. That night, the news cycle exploded again. Not just with the verdict, but the reactions. Legal experts weighed in. Pundits debated the fallout. Twitter threads ignited like wildfire. One clip of Jasmine's final courtroom statement trended for hours. In it, she said simply, "Accountability is not punishment. It's the beginning of something better, if we let it be." Some people applauded. Others screamed about censorship, political theater, or the death of free speech. But beneath all that noise, something quieter had shifted. Karoline saw it in her DMs. She didn't expect a message from a journalist she'd clashed with years ago. "Tough week, but I saw the look in your eyes. Maybe this breaks the mask. Maybe that's not a bad thing." Another came from an old mentor, long estranged. "What happens next is up to you. Don't waste the fall. Most people never get the chance to start over and know better." She didn't reply right away. Not at all. But she read those messages again and again the next morning. Karoline did something she hadn't done since college. She recorded a video by herself. No script, no team. Just her sitting in a plain chair by a window, morning light bleeding through the blinds. She looked tired but real. "I've had a lot of time to think," she said, "and I won't pretend I've got it all figured out. But I know now that being right isn't enough. Being loud isn't enough. If the words I used hurt people, especially people I wasn't even listening to properly, then that matters." She paused. No edits. "I won't fight the verdict. I won't spin it. I'll take the loss. But I won't waste it. That's all I can say for now." The video wasn't polished. It didn't go viral. But it didn't need to. The real change wouldn't come from a courtroom or a trending hashtag. It would come from the quiet, steady choices Karoline had to make. Once the spotlight moved on, Karoline stayed in Austin for a week. Not because she had to, but because she wasn't ready to go home. Home felt like facing a version of herself she hadn't made peace with yet, so she stayed. Walking unfamiliar streets, eating quiet dinners, keeping her phone on silent. By the end of the week, the media had moved on. A senator said something wild. A celebrity got arrested. The Karoline Leavitt story had been swallowed, digested, and spat out by the machine. Just another scandal filed away in the public's short memory. But she hadn't forgotten. She found herself journaling again, something she hadn't done in years. Not for content, not for posts, just to untangle her thoughts. In one entry, she wrote, "I wanted to be known for standing strong. I ended up standing alone." One afternoon, she wandered into a bookstore on South Congress, just looking, no real purpose. The woman behind the counter barely recognized her. She said nothing, just nodded once, and left Karoline alone. That small gesture meant more than Karoline expected. She sat in the back for nearly an hour, thumbing through books on ethics, media, race, and politics. Books she would have dismissed 5 months ago as liberal propaganda. But now she read slowly, without a highlighter, without rebuttals forming in her head. Just reading, trying to understand. It was uncomfortable, and maybe that was the point. A week later, she flew back to Sarasota. Her condo was quiet, clean, but it didn't feel the same. The air felt heavier, like it remembered the girl who used to come home full of fire and certainty, convinced she was changing the world, one sound bite at a time. That night, her mother came over with homemade chicken soup. They didn't mention the trial. They sat on the balcony as the sun dropped behind the treetops. No makeup, no studio lights, just 2 women, one much older than the other, both trying to figure out what came next. "You gonna go back to media?" her mom finally asked. Karoline stared out at the sky. "I don't know. Maybe something smaller, slower, realer." Her mom smiled gently. "Well, that would be a first." They both laughed. A real laugh, the first in weeks. That night, Karoline drafted a post, not a defense, not a PR spin, just a note. "I said things I wish I hadn't. I held views I never thought to question, but I've spent the last few weeks doing exactly that. I won't pretend that reflection erases damage, but I also won't pretend I'm the same person who sat behind that panel months ago. I want to rebuild from here. Not louder, just better." It didn't go viral, but a few people shared it quietly, with comments like, "Maybe there's hope," and "This feels honest." Karoline wasn't chasing redemption anymore. She just wanted room to grow. She started volunteering at a local community center, helping with youth debate classes. It was awkward at first. Some parents recognized her and kept their distance. But she showed up every week. She sat in the back, listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, she asked questions instead of giving answers. One day, a teenage girl approached her after class. "You're that lady from TV, right?" Karoline braced herself. "Used to be." The girl shrugged. "You said some messed up stuff." "I did," Karoline said. "But you came back." The girl thought for a moment. "That counts." And just like that, she walked away. Karoline stood there a while, hands in her pockets, letting that sentence settle. That counts. Maybe not to the media, maybe not to the people still dragging her name online, but to one girl, in one room, it counted. And that was something. Maybe the biggest lesson of all wasn't about speech or lawsuits or headlines. Maybe it was this: your voice is powerful, but only if you know when to use it, and when to let others be heard first. Mistakes don't define you. What you do after, that's the real story. So if you've ever said something you regret or let pride silence your growth, just know it's not too late to listen, to change, to rebuild. But it starts with honesty and the willingness to lose the microphone long enough to hear what you've missed.